We de-risk the entry of companies, individuals. We take the pain out of investing in real estate, whether it's your home or your business, by providing a completely de-risked environment for business. A bit of background on who we are: longtime emerging markets investors. Our core shareholders are from the United States, New Zealand, Norway, and the UK. And just to give you a brief example of what's happening at one of our projects, Tattoo City, in the last 4 years, we've welcomed 56 companies that range from Kenyan and East African and multinational groups like Unilever. And we are in the process of developing, various developers at our project have developed several hundred units, several thousand more under development as well. 2 schools open, educating 3,000 students a day. So we move very quickly once the projects take off. Thank you.
Perfect. Christopher?
Good morning, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on your time zone, everyone. I'm Christopher Osore, Director, MD for DLR Group Africa Limited. And we're an architectural practice design firm focused in a number of sectors. Primarily, since just speak about Africa, we've been in the Africa region for about 10 years, but on the ground in Kenya for about 5. With our headquarters for Africa based in Nairobi. And our biggest platform in design is education. And so we started on the continent looking at education projects, working with the larger institutions. And we then recently ventured off into a little bit the commercial space, retail, mixed use, healthcare, a little bit of hospitality, obviously with the pandemic that's struggling, but a wide range of services that are all ring-fenced around master planning. We're a 1,200 person firm, originated in the US in Omaha, Nebraska. I cut my teeth in a small place called Des Moines, Iowa for 25 years before I came to Nairobi. Really excited to be on the panel and share our insights on how we came to Africa, some of the challenges, a few of the successes, actually quite a few successes, and really help this forum understand how to navigate the architectural space vis-a-vis design and development. Thank you.
Perfect. Did we get Kofi back? Any comments? Are you there, Kofi?
Yes, I'm here.
We can't see you, but if you want to take 2 minutes and tell us a little bit about yourself, your firm, and what you're doing in 2 minutes.
Sure. My name is Kofi Anku. I'm the CEO of Real Estate and also a partner at I Mensa Park. I Mensa Park is a joint venture initiative with our company and a US-based company called Black Ivy. And we were able to collaborate to build 200 townhouses just outside of Accra. And we're just wrapping up our sales cycle and delivering the last of the units now. So it's really a testament to diaspora collaboration. Black Ivy is headed by a woman named Cheryl Mills, who's an African-American lawyer who heads Black Ivy. And I Mensa Park is probably the largest scale townhouse development in Accra at the moment.
Well, that means that Carlos and I are the only 2 on this panel that have not started a journey to be as successful as you gentlemen are currently doing in Africa. So my first question, and primarily to Christopher, Preston, and Kofi, what are some of the major opportunities and challenges confronting the real estate sector, particularly for bringing foreign investors in, foreign direct investment, and particularly from the United States? Each one of you can take a minute or so to answer that. Preston, you want to go first?
Sure. I think that the major opportunity, the list is too long to name in a minute. I think people who are joining this session and also others are aware of the opportunity that Africa presents over the coming decades, similar to what Asia presented over the last 30 to 40 years. The opportunity is to work with companies that are on the ground, Black Ivy, Rendeavour, And with DLR, big kudos to coming to Africa and actually having a presence on the ground and putting your headquarters in Nairobi. I think the opportunity is talking to people like us that are on this panel about the different areas of real estate that will work in Africa. The challenges are finding good partners. That I think is the biggest, and also financing. So you need to make sure that either your own venture or your partner are well financed. In Rendeavour's case, across our entire portfolio, we have no debt. And we plan to keep it that way because it allows us to develop through some of the ups and downs, political and economic shocks that happen in every emerging market and happen from time to time in our African markets. Thank you.
Christopher?
Right, and yeah, I think that's a fantastic question. You know, a lot of times, you know, what we found was that there was no shortage of opportunities. And that's, you know, everybody, you know, kind of looks at that and says, wow, you know, there's this plethora of things you can do. Matter of fact, we used to challenge ourselves, let's focus on 3 things on one trip and get those 3 things accomplished. And what we realized very quickly was finding ways to focus our initiatives and really focus our thought on the possibilities of getting and seeing things through. So you find a challenge is that a lot of opportunities are not well packaged. The idea is great, but you know there's some missing pieces to that. And for us as designers, we started really challenging ourselves to think beyond design. You know, so we start thinking and working with folks like Preston to almost get into the minds of developers, understand the pain points of where financing will come from. So the need is there. How do we bridge that gap between the funding, you know, the executor, and then actually the realization of the project? So we, you know, a challenge for us was really breaking the mold, getting out of our comfort zones as architects and designers and engineers, and really thinking holistically and being able to help our clients develop a roadmap to execution. I think that's, if I can say anything, that was the biggest, you know, challenge, but also became an opportunity for us, and it's really served us well. Even in pandemic times, we've probably this year been the busiest we've ever been on the continent, and that's a testament to the process that we kind of built and evolved over the 5 years of learning, if you will.
So you're saying while the most of us are almost at a standstill in the U.S., you guys are busy, so that means the opportunities continue. Kofi?
Yeah, absolutely.
Andy, I would agree with that 100%. There's a huge amount of opportunity and demand. Even when you look at diaspora folks that are based in the U.S. that are interested in buying property in Ghana, a huge percentage of my clients are based in the States. So again, our challenge as a Ghana-based developer or West African developers is access to capital. And that creates the opportunity for the diaspora. That in the US, you've got access to cheap finance. And if you can bring that into Ghana, it gives you a huge advantage.
Well, you know, that's probably a good question. And I wanted to go, I want to go to Carlos first, but I want to go back to what most people see as a perception in doing business on the continent, whether it's Ghana, Nairobi, South Africa, is this perception that it's A, difficult, B, the Preston point, you've got to have partners on the ground. How do you find those partners? This is a great panel to start, but let me go to what Kofi just ended with when he talked about access to capital. In the US, and Carlos mentioned where some of their capital comes from, some prohibit from going offshore. Carlos, do you see, Carlos, avenue to move capital offshore using some of the individuals we have just met and their platform, and can your capital be taken offshore?
You know, I think you guys hit on the key points of the perception of capital investing how to overcome the call it the entitlement risk, getting the development rights. What are the avenues there, and then having the good partners on the ground to manage, the overall business strategy. Speaking with, having worked with various investment groups over my career, there are groups out there that do have an international focus, even though they're based in the U.S. And the translation of returns that you can generate in the U.S. versus other parts of the world is the biggest impediment. I've been part of those conversations. We have our current capital partners have been mostly regional focused for our business platform, but just recently we've been talking about how do we expand. And with our platform, we think there are opportunities for us to go and find private capital who will align themselves with us if we're focused on our key core business practices of mission-driven multifamily projects. And so, I'll just personally, I was in South Africa this past December and was just amazed and met quite a few people about the opportunities and growth there on the continent holistically. So we're starting to see that there may be opportunities to utilize our platform if we could align ourselves with groups who have similar platforms of nature and focus to be able to bring some of our capital partners to the table.
Carlos, what I hear is what you're talking about is finding good partnerships, and the perception that even here in the U.S., if we're based in Florida and we want to do a project in D.C., obviously firms like Carlos' firms are the ones we'd look to partner with, depending on what we're bringing to the table. Access to capital, number one issue that confronts African Americans in this country, in the hotel sector and many real estate sectors. But again, this imagery and the invitation, I know in Ghana, there's a move to attract investors in from the diaspora. Unfortunately, most countries don't see that as an opportunity. We know Jamaica is, when I look at the other side of the world, in the Caribbean, countries like Jamaica are doing the same thing to attract from their diaspora people back home in business. We're looking at a student housing, multifamily development in Jamaica with a group of our investors. Preston, how difficult, and again, a question for both you, Kofi and Christopher, how difficult is the job of selling chiefly American investors that the opportunities that you guys mentioned and what you found obviously is something that's attainable? Because remember, jurisdictions, rules, obviously as a foreign national, you come into the country, we don't have that right partner. Even understanding the laws and how they govern investment sometimes can be daunting. Can any one of you talk a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, maybe I'll kick off if you don't mind. First I would say that if we look back over the last couple of decades, the media and the aid industry have been extremely effective at entrenching Africa's hopelessness as the conventional view. So starving children, famines, wars, and that's hard to fight against that stereotype and misperception. But at the same time, people don't understand, or we aren't ready to understand how quickly and rapidly change and structural change can occur. So if you look back, I mentioned Asia the first time around, I'll do it again. If you look back and look to the mid-70s in Asia, that was the overpopulated, politically incompetent, sort of war-riven region, ethnic conflict, everything you name, despots. Per capita income, except for Japan, was around $400. So that was just not too many decades ago. So it is very difficult to get investors to see what we see here on the ground. At the same time, there's plenty of opportunity. And if we go back to the partnership, if you have the right partners and you can shed the stereotypes not you personally, but many people can shed their stereotypes. The opportunity is certainly here.
Chris?
Right, and I mean, it's spot on, and I can just allude to an experience that we're having with working with DFC on an opportunity here in Nairobi. The challenge, and I agree 100% with what Preston is alluding to in terms of getting past the perception barrier, and once you get past that, then you're looking at a deal in Africa, in Nairobi, East Africa, South Africa, West Africa, and the folks that are running the numbers or evaluating the investment committees are asking themselves one question. They're saying, well, if I can invest in my backyard and get 5, 6, 7% returns, say someone's sitting in California, and what's the difference with doing that versus taking my money over to Africa and making 20, 25, 30% returns? And so between that 6, 7, and 25% gap is that perception quotient that Preston is hitting on. Yeah. And so bridging that gap with investors is key. And I'm really excited about this forum where folks can actually see. We encourage people to come to the continent, spend some time, get with the right partners, understand, listen to the stories, and see for yourself what's possible.
Well, Kofi, you're next, but I want to say then we ought to congratulate Dr. Alan Wilmount for having the foresight to start this discussion, because everything is about perception and information. Kofi?
Andy, I think the perception is changing. I think it's changing also with new technology, that we're now in a position where we can start telling our own stories authentically, and we're not at the mercy of fake news about the continent. That we're now seeing, even with our own development, it's not difficult for me to connect with literally millions of people, to tell my story and show the development that we put together here at IMensa, using YouTube, using Instagram, using LinkedIn, and making one-to-one connections with people all over the world. So I think that perception is falling away. I would say 40% of my clients across the board on all my real estate transactions are based abroad, typically Ghanaian Americans or Ghanaian Brits, but that circle is widening. It's now British Nigerians. It's also Black Americans who are now becoming clients. They're spending more time in places like Accra. They're looking for places where they can raise their family. The crime rate in Ghana is similar to Belgium. There are very few places in the world that can boast that. So I think people are really experiencing a different type of story, and we're showing a different narrative possible.
Well, Kofi, that's great. And Christopher talked about 5% profit and 30% profits. And my question is that, can I repatriate my profits back home? Usually, when you have some of these, and I want to talk a little bit about public-private partnership, most people want to be very clear that if I'm going to make 20%, going to have a good deal. I spent some time in Mali, and what I was surprised at is the opportunities and the undeveloped opportunities. And I know why Christopher left them on, because it's a whole new market. And then after that, Christopher, I'm going to leave it right there. But my point is that, can I repatriate profits? And then to Kofi's point, Kofi, technology is changing, but is the attitude of the investor and the imagery that have towards offshore and particularly investment in Africa changing too? But first, tell me about repatriating profits. You can keep the losses. I just want to bring the profits back. Tell me a little bit about that. Preston, what has been your experience from your investors? And Kofi mentioned he had a slate of investors.
So yeah, there's a currency that you have to look at generally when you're in these markets if you want to repatriate. We have a bit of a different case because we're investing back into the projects because they're very long term. In addition, what we do is in most of our projects, we either have special economic zone or free trade zone status, which is something we generally don't get at the beginning of a project. You only get it later once the government is understanding what you're doing and the long-term nature of the investment. But for example, in Nigeria, we're in the Lekki Free Zone, which is near Lagos, and there are 0 taxes. There is 0 VAT, and there is no restriction on the repatriation of capital, and you can trade in US dollars. So,
wow.
In essence, again, to the perceptions of Africa or emerging markets broadly, in the area we're in Nigeria, near Lagos, it's essentially like Liechtenstein. It's a tax haven, and it's somewhere where companies would have no trouble repatriating back to the US. In Kenya, we're a special economic zone, which is 10% corporate taxes and a number of other benefits as well. So you can look for those kind of opportunities. They're out there, they're different kinds of zones. That's one place to put a business and to look at investment.
Kofi, we talked about repatriating of profits, and you talked about the wide list of investors you have, particularly from the US. I mean, folks like Carlos and I that are based he's in DC, I'm in Florida. And our hotel owners, I know Bob Johnson built a hotel in Liberia many years ago, and we've had other opportunities, and all the major brands, particularly being led by Marriott and Hilton, are now kicking up their efforts on the continent. What do you see as the biggest impediment to getting people like Carlos to come and invest and or work on the continent where they would have the comfort? Because obviously it seems to be an individual thing, finding the right partners. But what's your image of what else can be done to get folks like Carlos and I to do what Chris did leaving Des Moines? Now, remember, Des Moines, Washington, and Iowa, and Florida is 3 different locations. Enough said on that. Kofi? Hey, Kofi, can you turn on your camera? Because I don't think we can see you. Your camera may be turned off.
Sure. Andy, my connection's a bit weak, so I think my camera is off.
Okay. We can hear you.
But sure. I think the perception is certainly changing, and at different levels of investment. Remember, a place like the entire economy of Ghana is about the size of Albuquerque, New Mexico. It's a pretty small place. So, when you're talking about billions of dollars, it doesn't require a huge amount of money to move the needle in a place like Ghana. And I think the business ecosystem has to have the right kind of investor, so you have a fitness and a match. And then as opportunities grow, we're going to be in a position to attract larger scale partners. So I think some of the investors are smaller players that are looking to buy a few units that they can rent out. And then with time, I think it's going to get more interesting for larger players. I would also say that there are a lot of global investors that are coming in from every part of the world. And that oftentimes, I think America, particularly those of us in Black America, can be a bit provincial and aren't seeing the opportunities that the Chinese, that the Arabs, that the Europeans are seeing, where there's a long history of investment in this part of the world. So I think there's an increasing amount of dialogue with forums like this that dispels some myths and also creates one-to-one partnerships and relationships.
I'm always curious when people Chinese, and I always have to remind people that I'm yet to find individual Chinese investors there, some a rare form, but throughout the region, and particularly in the Caribbean, these seems to be state-run organization and own organization, which has a whole cultural nuances to it. And 47% of all the rooms in the Bahamas are controlled by Chinese firms, and I always say controlled by the Chinese government, but that's another story. Do you also see possibilities of African investors looking to invest here in the U.S. and particularly looking to invest with firms like Carlos and our firm in the U.S. where we're in the hotel sector? Is that something, Preston, and this is to you, Chris, also, do you see people reciprocating? I know the push is to go to Africa, but I want people also to look and have a wide open margin that they can also invest in the U.S. Des Moines, Iowa, Chris, I don't know, but Preston, what's your thoughts on that?
For just to start, I want to point out that I left Colorado for Africa. Just, everybody knows where I come from.
Colorado, and you're there, Chris. Right? You know, go ahead.
So I would say that on a personal level, the connection between first through the diaspora, but then others going toward the United States still is very, very strong. Whether it starts with education, and as, let's say, African entrepreneurs return or have their education here and look toward international investments, the pull to the United States is extremely strong. So I wouldn't say that I see it on a large corporate basis, but I can only imagine it leads in that direction over time.
I agree. Chris?
Right. You know, I love the Des Moines jokes, but actually they're warranted. Yeah, bring some corn over to Nairobi. It's interesting in that, yes, there's a big push here in Africa to try and obviously bring up the middle class or the lower class into the middle class. There's a lot of discussions, and I know this is more of a infrastructure forum, but there's a lot of discussions about making connections with the U.S. There's a lot of there's diaspora in the U.S. and Europe and in Asia, Australia, that is making remittances to the continent. I think Kenya has some odd about $3 to $4 billion a year. So these are inflows of just remittances. You know, maybe $100 a person. And the discussion on the ground here has always been, you know, what is that money being used for? Is it being put to work? And there's a space here that maybe is not being tapped, which might be a reciprocal discussion around manufacturing. And Preston, I think your development is starting to really look at things like that, you know, where you look at light industrial value addition of product that could then make its way back to America, to Europe. So then it's not just a one-sided transaction. So I think there's a broader play that we could look at of things like that starts to create a nice loop between remittances, money being put to work in the right way, and then export, and really developing a sustainable ecosystem. But I think we're a little ways away from really making that a solid initiative. But I think forums like this need to start to draw into that. So Andy, I think that's a great question.
No, I like that, Christopher. Kofi, you want to add anything to that? I want to go to Carlos. I've got an idea I want to run by Carlos.
I would just say quickly that there's a large and wealthy, well-educated Ghanaian West African diaspora that are investing in all kinds of ways in the U.S., that live in the States. And in some ways, oftentimes they're more apt to invest in the U.S. than in Ghana. So I think that those investments are going in both directions.
You know, value added, particularly real estate development, we see all throughout the investment area is people investing in all kinds of things. I think these types of forums will open up the diaspora to start the discussion. And if somebody owns a company that manufactures widgets, when they find that their personal investment is going well, then they take a deeper dive. Carlos, in the US, and not too long ago, back in 2001, there was only one Black-owned hotel that had a brand in the United States. What we found is that by educating people to the opportunity, people will begin to say, you know, I can do that. I can get two friends together and maybe raise the money and become a Tom Baltimore or a Norm Jenkins or a Ken Farron or Jair Lynch. So I think opening up the airwaves and having these discussions is so brand new that, Carlos, I can't remember, and I'm going to put this on our agenda for next year, okay, beyond the US. I can't remember that I've gone to a local US-based conference, whether it's, you know, Jair and I are at Reese, whether we talked about going beyond our borders here. What do you think the opportunity is, Carlos, for encouraging folks in your sector, some are doing it already, but a wider discussion so that guys like Preston and Kofi seems to be great potential partners, that people ought to meet them, and then the perception tends to be a myth more than a reality. What do you think about people in our sector, and is that difficult? I guess the question I want to ask. It's a long way of asking a simple question.
Well, it's not a simple answer either. I think what we're seeing, Andy, as you know, in our area of having prominent Black owners in real estate, it has grown tremendously. And now people are in key capital positions to, you know, drive certain types of transactions. And I think it's only fitting and natural that at this time of where we are and the capabilities that rest amongst that collective groups that are participants in Reese and other major organizations like that, that if the education is there and with the knowledge base you have and experience, I think there will be opportunities. I think, you know, you have a very well-trained group of people like myself, Jair, yourself, Andy, and, you know, we can, it's a host of people. Norm Jenkins has had tremendous success up and down the East Coast and has a great track record. So does Bob Johnson, that group in the hotel space, and we're in the multifamily. I mean, we can bring a round table together, and I think it's just, we're now like any other major class of investors who have the knowledge and have capital that is looking to grow and can understand the fundamentals and probably is more nimble and can take some type of risk. And a lot of these groups like us are mission driven, so you probably get the ear faster with a broad audience, I think.
You know, it's interesting because we just announced PGI, Raul Thomas in Miami, who's raised a $500 million fund. And while that fund can be deployed, or the money can be deployed in the Caribbean, I neglected to ask him whether it can also be in Africa. But after this event, that's something I'm going to have a call with him this afternoon and ask. But I think for a lot of us, you know, the bidding process, working with governments, working with partners. Listen, I took a personal project to help work with my daughter to build her funeral home business, and I was kind of surprised at the roadblocks you can run into in terms of bidding on contractors and going to government regulations, because typically we always have a general contractor that would do that. Is that the sort of quagmire one can get caught up in either one of the jurisdictions that you guys are in? Or having a good partner like Preston and Chris, you're the architect, and Kofi makes that all go away and we don't even see that nightmare.
If I may go first, I think the first, just in terms of understanding the market, we just from a business standpoint, limited our government exposure to about 20-25%. We mostly work with the private sector, and part reason to that is, yes, the government is still a little, how do I put it, politically correct. It's still tough to work with. So, you know, you're talking tender process, you're talking, you know, so you might even win the opportunity and then you have to struggle to get paid. So.
You know that well here in the US.
Right. So, and governments, yeah, governments are tough to work with anywhere. It's probably challenging. You just have to know how to work and navigate the system. So for us, we limit that exposure. We only work on bespoke government projects that make sense for us. But most of our work is with folks like Preston and others who really understand the value proposition of what you're bringing. There's transparency in how you're doing the business, and then, you know, charting a pathway forward. And what we found is when we do that, we're able to then bring on our investor partners a lot easier to the table, because there's good governance, you know, everything is clear, there's no murkiness in the deal. And so for us as architects, and as we kind of expand our view in terms of planning and project execution, we find that doing that and having that clear pathway is a lot easier for us.
Let me just add something to that. Public-private partnerships. We hear all the time when we get calls or emails, people saying, I live in Ghana and the government's going to give me 3,000 acres and it's all beachfront. All we need is your money. I mean, private partnerships.
Never that easy.
You know, we hear that all the time and people just don't get it. And when I get those calls, I shake my head. That's part of why people, you know, get this image of, you know, 5,000 acres of land. Something is wrong. In the US, and Carlos and I know about, Norm Jenkins did a public-private partnership that worked really well, that $545 million, 1,175-room Marriott. And for us, we welcome those sort of opportunities. But we always get those questions in Africa. Tell either one of you, tell us a little bit about this. The guy that calls me tomorrow and said, I got 500 acres on the beach and we need your money. I thought it was public-private partnership, but Chris, I see it. Preston, you want to take a stab at that?
Yeah, sure. So what 7 projects in Africa?
That 500-acre property deal, right?
Yeah, that wasn't I. So we, of our 7 developments, 7 city projects, they're all privately held. We're the majority. In some cases, we own 100% of the project. We have partners that range from local landowners to tribal stools in the case of Ghana. And we have one public-private partnership in Nigeria. So in Lagos, our partner is the Lagos state government. What has been different, or how we have managed that, has been being very local. We've made plenty of mistakes along the way. When you come and invest, just like you would at home if you're starting a business, you know, generally you're not going to give up after a year or 2, even in the United States. And so here you need to be able to put in the hard yards. The public-private partnership that we have in Nigeria has gone very well. I have to say it took us the better part of 5 years to solidify that partnership and relationship over 2 different administrations of the Lagos state government. So again, long-term, getting to know your partners very well, having both feet on the ground, not trying to do a fly-in, fly-out coverage of whatever market you may be looking at in Africa. It takes time, and you have to stick with it. But I would say that's true of any business you're starting anywhere in the world.
So there are government incentives on a more serious note for some of the projects that you guys are involved in, and those that can attract investors to the various countries.
Right. I mean, maybe I could add to that. I quite astutely mentioned, Preston, you cannot fly in and fly out. I did that for the first 3 years of being coming to Nairobi in Africa, and I was in and out, and down on the ground for 2 weeks, and then you leave for another 3 weeks and back. So one, you're perpetually jet lagged, but two, as soon as you leave, it's like everything stops, and you come back after 3 weeks and you start all over again. So the momentum, it's like a football game. You have to build a steady cadence and momentum, and you just literally have to be on the ground for extended periods of time to keep pushing. So on that note, there are good public-private partnerships. Absolutely, you have to do your homework. You have to vet who you're working with. It has to be an area that you're very good at. That's the other side of it. You need to know that market inside and out, so that when you're getting into the conversation with a public entity, you know exactly where to plug them in to ensure success. And I think Preston can speak to a little bit of that. And that's probably why it took you 5-6 years with that entity, because you almost have to put them in a particular box and lock them in place and say, here you go, we're going to take this, here's where we're going to go, and here's how we're successful together. But it takes time. It takes time.
Yeah, Preston said it best. You got to know your partner, and once you have confidence in your partner, I know Quentin Primo's doing some stuff on the continent, but you've got to have the right partnerships. Guys, looking around today, are there any specific collaboration based on each one of our companies that we can do together, individually, or any thoughts on that? We've got another 5 minutes, and then we'll get a wrap-up question from each one of you. But first of all, do you see any collaborative efforts that we can do? I'm in the hotel space, so we're always open. We like mixed use. We like great returns, as Chris mentioned. We want to be above 5. We like a little higher, Chris. But anything that we actively do, or you see great opportunities for U.S. firms, not necessarily ours, Carlos and mine, but any other areas that you see that is ripe for collaborative and strategic partnering? That's a broad question to all the panelists. The silence means no?
I'll kick it off then. I would say that very broadly, because we're doing city scale developments in the real estate sector, it is all there. So hotels, Andy, to your background first, huge opportunity for 3-star hotels and up. Actually, most of the markets are a bit saturated with the 4 and 5 stars. So good quality business hotels, huge opportunity in all the markets we're in. Logistics. So in terms of the improvements of African infrastructure in the coming decades, logistics players that get in now, if you've got the right warehousing, if you've got the right quality warehousing, you do extremely well. So 2 examples in Kenya that have come to Tattoo City. They're international investments, some with DFI funding and some private. One is the largest grade A warehousing and logistics center in all of East Africa. It's called Africa Logistics Properties. They're doing extremely well here. The second is private equity, international private equity, that's starting out of South Africa. It's the largest cold storage facility in East Africa that's being built at Tattoo City, but they're not stopping there. They're going to go and do 5 more in East Africa, then they go West Africa, North Africa, Southern Africa. So in the logistics space, I would say that's another highlight as well. And schools. Schools have been the big surprise for us over the last 3 years, having both local curriculum and international schools open. They buy land, we provide the infrastructure, they develop and open within a year, and they're oversubscribed. One of them was founded by the former heads of McKinsey's education advisory practice. They saw the opportunity and got into the business. They're doing very well. That brand is called Nova Pioneer. So really across the board, we look forward to interaction through these kind of forums directly with the association to find and match these opportunities to you.
What about energy and labor costs? They compare them with the U.S. in half a second. Energy costs, particularly in labor costs.
Kofi, do you want to take power? You've got a good knowledge of the US and Ghana.
Sure. I think power costs in Ghana are probably a little bit higher than they are in the US. So I think maybe 11 cents per kilowatt hour, I think might be a retail price.
Wow, that's great. In the Caribbean, we're talking about 40, 50 cents per kilowatt hours. That's great.
And I'd say we're in that range, and Ghana certainly the same as Kofi and Mensa Park. Kenya about the same, up to maybe 14.
Wow, that's great.
That's not bad.
Carlos, what do you see strategic partnerships going on from your perspective? I mean, I like Preston's mixed use because it's great to have a footprint where, based on market studies, one can drop a brand, a business class hotel, depending on what the market needs. Have you had any discussion, going back to Preston for a second, have you had any discussions, Preston, with some of the major brands like the Hiltons and Marriott's and Wyndhams of the world?
Yeah, yes, we have. And on those brands, frankly, it's a disappointment because they're only coming into Africa with management contracts. They're not developing. So they're relying on local developers by and large, some international funding to actually get the hotels built. So to the extent the association and its members are ready to invest in bricks and mortar, the management companies are ready and in the market and looking to expand, but regrettably not in the development itself.
Well, we feel the same way about brands here, but the good thing is that it helps to drive ROI if I've got a good brand. Carlos, I mentioned earlier, what do you see collaborative efforts and strategic partnering in with companies and deals like these, as our panelists have spoken?
So, for us, I think, we really like the multifamily space. The fundamentals here in the U.S. are easily attainable and are easily to articulate to an investor pool. Hearing what you all have expressed today, sounds like some of those fundamentals that we could translate to our investor pools exist in the markets that you're playing in, be it that the control of the land, the entitlements process, and then the key dynamic economic drivers of population growth, and what's the market and what the is looking for. We prescribe a lot to the millennials here, and then a lot of senior housing, but we're also really focused on our mission to do affordable housing, and affordable not in just subsidy housing, but housing for a specific economic class. And we know how to execute on all levels and actually manage that process. So if there are opportunities there where we could bring our expertise in a collaborative manner, I think that exists for us.
Well, gentlemen, we're just about out of time. I hope this panel has been as informative for all of you as it has been for me, and I hope that our audience will find value in some of the collaborative ideas that we've discussed. For us in the hotel space, it's always important to find the right partner, and I agree with Preston that with the brands bringing management, what we like about them is the ability to partner hotels, so that if somebody's in Des Moines, Colorado, Florida, and they go to Lagos or Accra, they can find the same sort of service that a Hilton, Marriott, Wyndham, Hyatt, Holiday Inn brings. And for us, we are encouraged that Dr. Allen's idea of this summit has brought us not only closer together in terms of ideas, but have opened the doors for future collaboration and partnership. So with that, we're completely out of time. Let me thank the panelists. Let me thank the organizer, Dr. Allen, for providing this great forum. And it's been wonderful. And we all have our contact numbers online. I think you can ping us. I had a chance to look at the directory earlier. Preston, Kofi, I will be reaching out to you guys. I don't know whether I want to go back to Des Moines, Iowa, but I like where Chris has moved. So Chris, definitely, we're going to be reaching out to you. And of course, Carlos, I'm sure, will do the same. But thank you all, and please enjoy the rest of the conference and have a pleasant afternoon. It's not cocktail hour here in Florida, but I'm sure someplace in the world it is.
Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.